Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. I am your host, Neil Horowitz. Hit me up on Twitter, NJ27, also on LinkedIn, where I post more content. The website, dsmsports.net, where you can find everything. And of course, the podcast is available on whichever podcast platform is your favorite. So psyched for the show today. I was so delighted with how this interview came out. Just thrilled by this guest. My guest on the podcast today is Alec Palmer. He is a senior manager of social content for the LA Kings. Just a seriously tremendous interview. Some of the best that we've had, the best kind of conversations where we hit about around big picture strategy as well as day to day, empowering creatives, making sure that strategy and content tie to the ultimate goals of the business organization. A little bit about evolving voice and tone, working with players, the evolution of for the Kings of marketing their players. Just so much good stuff. We also hear about the harmonica ladies. If you're not sure about who the harmonica ladies are, just Google that and the LA Kings, and you'll see what we're talking about. Lots of good backstory there from Alec. Just so much good stuff. So stick around. Here he is, Alec Palmer of the LA Kings. Back on the podcast with today's guest. I'm so psyched to have him on. He is a returning guest, although it feels like forever ago, like different lives ago. And we'll get into that a little bit on the pod. But my guest on the podcast today is Alec Palmer. He is senior manager of social content for the LA Kings. And welcome to the podcast today, Alec.
Thanks, Neil. Thanks for having me back. It's always good when you get the invite back. You didn't mess up too much the first time. So happy to be here.
Man, if we could go and have a conversation with ourselves, however many years ago it was, maybe what, five,
Uh,
6, 7 years ago or something, just different lives. So a lot to catch up on, and we're gonna talk about all about the really good stuff you guys do with the Kings. As I was telling Alec before, as it pains me to say it, because I even have posted about this publicly as well. I will post like in a really, I hate to do it, the Kings do a good job on social, and I can't help but share good social content and share good content. And so I have begrudging respect for everything you guys do, and I'm looking forward to learning about it today from you.
it's like the best compliment you can get, right? Like even when your enemies like it, that's the best. So I really appreciate the support as always.
So before we get into the meat of our discussion, Alec, I want to hear your story. For all the new and returning listeners and viewers, and of course the update as well. Tell us about just going back to going to school, going to B school, what you did with Momentum, and then of course the opportunity with the Kings, and we can get into the recent like reorg where you sit with the Kings now as well.
Yeah. So yeah, and it's crazy to think like you said, I mean different lives at this point since the last time I was on and well over 10 years since I like started college and stuff. So like, that's where I always go back to is kind of where all of this started.
Mhm.
So I went to college at Baldwin Wallace University, right outside a suburb of Cleveland called Berea, Ohio. As a lifelong Steelers fan, going to where the Browns headquarters was always interesting, but I actually went there to study neuroscience and play baseball. It's a D3 school. So, I was looking when I was looking, getting recruited for baseball coming out of high school. I was like, I really want to go somewhere with good academics. And I'm not just saying that because if my mom or dad listen, they can hear that and feel good. But like, I knew that like I wasn't making it to the MLB. Like I knew that. So I was like, I want to have good grades. I want to have a good academic background. So went there and I was really invested. I wanted to do, Alzheimer's and dementia research, CTE, things like that, how sports affected it. I didn't know exactly where, but like I knew I wanted to work in that field. And
Yeah.
um, going in there, I was all, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, ready to go. And my first couple classes, I'm in neuro classes and I'm in the lab playing with rats. And I'm just sitting like, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't, I was just not the type that needed to be in the lab and do all the chemistry and learn all that stuff. I was never that good at that. And I knew like as I was going through, I'm like, I could do it. I'm sure I'd graduate, have a great time, but like it just wasn't fulfilling me. And I knew that pretty early on. So I changed my major a couple times, went to marketing, realized I don't know if I want to kind of pigeonhole myself into one thing. So let me back out, find something more general businessy and I switched to accounting. My dad's a financial planner. I kind of grew up in that finance world, and I knew accounting was a way that I was like, even if I didn't want to do accounting, it was a good degree to have. It's pretty malleable, pretty flexible to what you can do. So I
Yeah.
didn't know what I wanted to do at that point, so I just switched to that. As I was going through, I was playing baseball. I ended up getting hurt going into my sophomore year, and that's kind of where I owe my career to. And I didn't know at the time, right? I didn't know that at the time, but when I got hurt, I'm not one who's like, "Oh, if I didn't get hurt, I was going to the league." Uh,
On
knew that before I wasn't going to the league, but
Puerto Rico.
exactly. But as I got hurt, I kind of took the time off and I wasn't around the team. I was living with my friends and stuff, but I wasn't playing, I wasn't competing, and I gained a ton of weight, and I was just like, my mental health was poor, and I'm just like, I can't do this. I have to be around it. And as this is happening, this is about 2015, 2016-ish.
Mm.
And I always owe so much to two people or two organizations and a person is I'm in Ohio. My best friend and roommate is a huge Ohio State Buckeyes fan, and now I'm an Ohio State Buckeyes fan. But I started following them closer and closer, and their social media presence and their content, like I still think they're the gold standard.
Yeah.
But they were so early, and people like Sam Silverman, people like Chris Charzopoulos, and um, a lot of those people who were around those early times, they kind of laid the foundation for the creative media world. And I honestly believe that. And I think there were probably people before them, and I'm not excluding them, but those are the ones where I was like, look at this. This is building their brand. I'm watching it. People are looking at this in, all of these different things. And then I
They
look
were
at
the first where like you saw their like pregame hype videos and you're like, this is like a Hollywood trailer. And you're like,
exactly.
or it's better than a Hollywood trailer even.
Right. So I'm like, oh my God, this is like giving me chills watching it. And I'm thinking, I I was like, we should have that. I'm like, I played for 2 years and I have one photo of myself playing baseball. And I'm like, that's just sad. Like, not even for like I knew why we didn't have any resources. We're a small school, but I was just sad. I didn't have those memories. And that's why I always looked is like when you're working in sports, you're every season's history. And not only if it's pro team or college or whatever, like every season is another season of history. And there's memories that are attached to all those for fans, for the athletes, for the coaches, all of that. And I realized that's what they were doing. And I thought, let me see if I can do that. I'm creative. I'm enough, says the accounting major who's sitting in Excel spreadsheets all the time. And I thought my aunt actually, she was a just like a hobby photographer. So she had a camera and I asked her if I could have it. And she's like, yeah, I just got a new one. Here you go. And I had no idea. I'm throwing it on auto, just going. And I talked to our baseball coaches that I was still close with. And they're like, yeah, come on, let's shoot, whatever. Coming to practice, whatever. So I'm shooting it. And then I was like, hey, what if I posted these on the BW baseball channel? And they're like, yeah, why not? Like, we've nothing to lose. And so we were doing that, and no one was doing that at the D3 level. Like it was not even a thought, right? And I was doing that, working so closely, and I was starting to do more, and I was teaching myself Photoshop and Premiere and Lightroom and photography and videography. I started to get my own gear, and I realized I'm like, I kind of like this a lot. I can kind of do this, and as I did that, I really started to love it, and I went to our athletic department, and I was like, hey, I think that you guys should pay me to work study to do this. Like I'm building a brand for the organization, for the school and for the baseball program. So, I may have exaggerated my abilities a little bit to get them to do that.
We all do.
But right, but they said, yeah, sure. They paid me whatever the $12 an hour or whatever it was at that time for my work study. And I was making a little bit, I wasn't doing it for the money, but I needed some money to be doing this.
Yeah.
And I traveled I got back into it my junior year and I was with the baseball team the entire year and with all my friends again, and life was getting better. And at this point, I'm still doing accounting. And our coach as they started recruiting, high school seniors or juniors were coming in and being like, oh, yeah, I saw that hype video on the BW Instagram. I really
Wow.
like it. And our coach was like, oh my God, this is something. So they ended up bringing me back, obviously, in my senior. It was my junior senior. I don't remember exactly the year, but they brought me back, and I was doing that more and more, and I was loving it. And then the rest of the school started to take notice, and they were like, "Well, why is baseball getting this?" And they're like, "Well, they just kind of did it." Um, so then I worked for men's basketball. I helped with the athletic department and started to create this kind of creative media position at the school. And this whole time I'm doing accounting. I got accepted into our 3-2 master's MBA program. And I'm like, well, I'm getting an MBA now in accounting because, whatever. So I bought myself basically a fifth year to hone those skills in. And um, that kind of really changed my life. And I owe everything to, our head coach, Brian Harrison. He still is just one of the most inspiring people I've had in my life. to this day. I'm actually seeing him, hopefully seeing him this weekend when I'm going home. And
Yeah.
Coach Tom DeAngelis as well, who's now in the MLB as a hitting coach and a development coach. I believe he's still at the Yankees. And
Wow.
um, it's cool. It's cool to look back. And as I went through that, I worked and kept getting my skills. And in my fifth year, as I'm trying to figure out what do I want to do, I was interviewing for a couple more traditional jobs, and I found a startup called Momentum, and I reached out, cold email. They're doing a lot of stuff in Cleveland. I was like, hey, if you ever need someone, I'm in baseball, I do this. Got a response, got hired, started as freelance, got brought on full time. And I was traveling around the country following different baseball MLB players,
Yeah.
creating the content, starting at a startup. I was employee like 4 or 5 or something. And we were really growing. COVID hit. And ironically, like that was a huge growth opportunity for us because we were the only ones doing it. And especially in baseball, the company was so ahead of its time, and what we were doing was great. And I still remain friends with Tyke Green, who's one of the co-founders, and Tyke's one of the best, if not the best, documentarian in our game,
Yeah.
or in the game. And yeah, as I was there, about 2 years in, I decided to leave there. Wanted a little change of pace. A couple months later, I got the Kings job, moved out to LA, and I've been here since. So I came in on social media manager, got promoted to senior manager of social content last year. So it was after about 2.5, 3 years here, and hoping to keep growing. So that's kind of where I got to today. I could talk about it forever, but also in between, also in that, I got asked to come be an adjunct professor at Baldwin Wallace. Just finished that. I
So
taught for
cool.
5 years, which is crazy. Some in person, some online. And I just stopped doing that last year as I was getting busier. But that was just one of the most amazing experiences, giving back as much as I could. And a lot of my students now. Um, you see them in all the different places. Actually, one of my former students, is one of the heads of creative at Ohio State football, ironically enough.
Oh,
Another kind of colleague I knew and got connected with early on, and he was actually at Ohio Wesleyan when I got connected with him, and he wanted to do the same thing I was doing at OU. And he did. His name's Carter Franklin. He's also one of the heads of creative at Ohio State football. Uh,
damn.
but the other people around, I've got people, students who I had or people who I talked to, and I'm always so proud to see where they've all gone, and hopefully I made a little bit of impact there. So yeah,
That's
that's kind of my story up to today.
Love hearing the story. Love about how you made your own way, you took initiative, developed skills and creative value, and of course are living the adventure now. And we'll talk all about it, all about what you're doing with the Kings, of course, as well. But as you started coming up and started making your career in this space, like how did you start to learn about content and strategy, about what you're trying to accomplish with content? Like you're with Momentum, you're telling athlete stories and trying are you trying to do something that's more, this is how Momentum thinks about success, and this is the kind of tone that we want to have, or is it really like I have to get to know each athlete and their audience and what they're trying to do, and how's it sort of stayed with you as you moved into what you do today with the Kings?
So at the very base of everything, I think any creative does, and it's so oversaid, but like it's true, is you have to tell a good story. People want good content, and there are trends and there's things that are hot to do and whatever, and visually appealing or whatever, and those things flow with the wind, right? So I'm a believer in you can't base your content strategy on just chasing trends, because you just don't have an identity at that point. So one thing that's something I learned early on was like you may not be able to be as hack as many social algorithms or get into this, and like something I've had to learn is like how to get into trends, how to follow those things. But my overarching thought that I've learned and kind of developed was telling good stories about players and their character, what their off ice character is like. Even if you're telling that story via their on ice or on field persona, what their off ice personality is does flow into that. So how are we telling those stories? And that is, yes, at Momentum, we learned so much. I learned so much about how to talk about specific players and how to build that personal relationship. And I've leveraged so many of those skills now
Totally.
with the Kings. And what, reason we were able to go to Switzerland because we've built a really good relationship with Kevin Fiala and different things like that. But now it's how can I tell and how can we as an organization, our content team, tell a better brand story. So that's something I'm taking in my head when I'm approaching my work. What did I learn from the player side? How did we tell those stories? And how can we adapt those same things into telling a better story about the Kings, a story about our community, a better story about our brand or our product or whatever that might be. So storytelling is a huge part, and it's a learning process. Things change all the time, but what that through line is always telling a good story. And what is that narrative? What is that story you want to tell?
Yeah.
So that is something I learned a lot at Momentum. But I like to say, like, kind of how my job path was. I never had like a formal, like, this is what a content strategy looks like. This is
Totally.
how you present one to someone. So that's all stuff I'm learning day to day. Um, but it's very validating as we're going through and things are working that, maybe my team has spearheaded or things we've thought through and brainstormed and, like our schedule release stuff this year. And like, it's all these different things that I've learned along the way that help me kind of attack each project or think through. But all that can only be done with our team. And I'm the first one to tell them I am not a technical expert in any of those creative
Mhm.
services or shooting, editing, whatever. But I really love the producing. I really love the idea aiding and planning and all of that. And that's where I found is to play to your strengths too. Don't feel like you have to do everything. So I don't know if that answers your exact question,
Totally.
but it's always a learning process in content strategy.
No, I want to touch on it a little bit too because like it's a really interesting point you bring up. In that you had the creative skills, like you had time like shooting photos and some video and obviously developing content at Momentum. But you say yourself that like I'm not the best creative on the King staff, and I'm sure like I'm speaking on your behalf right now, but I think you'd agree with that.
Yeah.
But there are skills you like. So what does that skill set look like to, and what is the even the, if someone is aspiring to be in that sort of more producer role where you are concepting and project managing to some degree and tweaking and making sure the story is cohesive and going in the right direction, like what does that skill set look like, and how do you even prepare to really master that, and how have you gotten better over time as well of kind of sitting in that sort of, I even said before we started recording that like, I kind of think of you as almost as like this executive producer at the King. So what is an executive producer? What kind of skill set do you need to have, and how do you continue to hone those skills?
I think there's so much value in doing the hard work in going through all of those. Had I not had to edit so much and shoot video, shoot photo, run social channels, do all these different things, planning, even the small like things I would do at Momentum, like packaging stickers and running merch and just learning all those things, that is the thing you can't skip over that. I think so many people nowadays they get their first job and they're like, I don't want to do any of this little grunt work. I don't want to do any of the day to day. I want to just think big ideas. And like, yes, that should always be encouraged. But there is value in knowing how to do those things, not only because you should have to step in, something happens, you need to step in and do it and know you can execute it, but there's value in understanding and connecting with your teams on there's an understanding of oh, he does know what goes into shooting this
Yeah.
video. And maybe he doesn't know the entirety of like what all goes into a red camera and a whole studio and production setup, but there's enough where they know where if I'm pressuring them to get something done or asking them to do something, it's something I would ask myself to do as well.
Yeah.
And that's what I hope comes through to my team and even cross departmentally is I know what it takes and I know I can step in at any time and that trust that builds between. So that's where I think that's important for a lot of people nowadays is it's important to know those technical skill sets. It's important to know what people do on the daily and that you have done it because now when you're approaching different shoots or you're approaching different pieces, you can think, okay, well, if we go to Switzerland and we have this mic'd up, I really want that out as soon as possible, but it's probably going to take 2 to 3 days to edit and get the footage and all that stuff. So how like if I'm saying I want it in 24 hours, they're going to be like, who the hell is this guy? Like they know this can't happen, right? Or he knows that this giant production to get this in 24 hours is probably a lot.
Yeah.
So I think there is a level of that trust and that understanding, mutual understanding of I feel better at when to push and know when someone's trying to put off work or trying to over exaggerate. But I also know when to, okay, I know when to pull back or I know when to ask. And I think that is something that everyone in our industry needs to understand because that's always one of the biggest contentions of creatives is they're feeling like their boss is like they don't know what the hell they're talking about. They've never done this. And I think that's the important part of how we structured our department is everybody that filters up except to basically our top boss has done parts of what we've done, what we do on the daily. So
Yeah.
you always have that trust of they're coming from a good place, they have an understanding. And keeping that up is always something that I think is important for long-term department and organizational success.
What's sort of that give and take like too as content comes together, especially when it's more highly produced. Like, are you like saying, "Hey, can you make a tweak here? Can you make do this? Can you do this?" Or are you giving them basically like an overview of this is the direction we want to go in, and then letting them have some sort of some agency and creative agency, I guess, in making the exact edit.
I think it's a balance. I think there's stuff where I'm a believer in you vet people and not in this is not groundbreaking. You vet and build the trust starting in the interview process. So when you're interviewing someone, you really need, and we do a vibe check of like, what's this person going to be like truly? Like really dig into what they're going to be like when they show up and stop, you know, the game's crazy or they're super stressed. How are they going to react? And that's something we're looking for because we want people to be independent, but not feel isolated.
Yeah.
We want them to be able to ask the dumbest question they've ever thought of, but ask also the smartest question they've ever thought of. And having that back and forth and is huge. So we have producers and we really try to encourage them to build out ideas, pitch ideas, but also the understanding not every idea, one, is going to be good. Not every idea is going to be executed right away. Not every idea is ever going to be executed. But that ideation, that freedom to fail too, I think is so important because that's what frees people up. For example, Ryan Ortegon, he's our social producer. He joined us late in the season last year, and he's been phenomenal. Like, I mean, the things he's done, and him and our mascot Bailey, they had this idea to do a cologne commercial uh, with Bailey, and it's like this like really nonsensical like, we called him like Sexy Bailey because it's like, he's doing like the beach thing, his shirt's coming off, whatever, and they had the idea and they ran with it, filmed it in like 2 days. They had the idea, it was filmed within 2 days, they edited it. And that was something that came out of the understanding of like, go run, go do things. And so I think that is important, but there's also a level of we need to know when we're planning those events and when we're planning these things out more. And I think I said like a lot of that is due to the people you bring in, and you have to understand how the team dynamics. If you want more people, like right now, we have a ton of producers who are just run. They're run and go do things. And we're looking, okay, if we added another producer, what are we looking for?
Yeah.
Well, we need another really strong editor. We need a really strong, I don't want to say doer, but a really technically sound, like more hyper focused on the details type of person to add to the team because that might feel like, oh, we're maybe missing a little bit of that.
Yeah.
But we have all this. So it's always taking stock of what that is. And if I get to add another person to my team, I'm going to think, okay, well, what do we need here? If I'm adding another person, I'm probably taking another step out of the day to day.
Mhm.
So what am I going to fill? What do I need to fill in
Yeah.
another person? So long way around to that question, but I think it's building your team in a way that fulfills as many skill sets as possible because that helps that. And I think one thing to add is what we're so good at, and I guess I'm biased, but what I think we're so good at is we don't say no a lot.
Mhm.
We're usually you have a crazy idea, yes, until it's proven otherwise. And I think that's important for creatives and important for people in the creative industry to feel, and that goes hand in hand with that freedom to fail. If you fail and you lose us millions of dollars, that's a different thing. But having this freedom to, "Oh, that idea didn't work out as well. That's okay. I'm not discouraged. Let's move on."
Yeah.
I think is the important other side of that coin of always saying yes.
I think the Kings fans too have come to love the kind of irreverent and like unexpected content as well to some degree. And we're going to get into the Kings brand and voice and strategy and all that. I'm kind of bouncing around here because this is just going so good organically and how things are floating off the top of my head here. But I want to talk about you gave a couple of great examples there, like of the Sexy Bailey, quick turnaround. And as you alluded to before, we're speaking not long after you got back from Zurich, Switzerland, with Kevin Fiala, your guys' sharpshooter wing, and so like, when you are whether you're in charge of pitching it or you're part of the team that's pitching it, is of hey, we want to go to Switzerland. We know it's a big investment. Here's what we're going to produce. Here's why we think it's worth it. And then kind of to a lesser degree, something just like the hey, we're gonna make this fake cologne ad for Bailey, and here's why we think it's worthwhile. Here's why we think it's a good use of our time and our producers' time. So both from the big project that's a sizable investment going overseas, to a something more smaller like that that's not necessarily like a ticket selling message or whatever or tied to like a promotional night. How do those things come together? What does that pitching process look like? And how do you make that case?
Yeah, so definitely two wildly different
Oh yeah.
processes. But Switzerland, I think, started almost 2 years ago. This is something we've tried to pitch more and more is going in the off season. And as we've grown our team, I'm glad that it didn't happen until this year. I think that this was the best opportunity for us to go. And we would have done a good job no matter what if we went last summer or the summer before. But this is the true like we felt right. We had the team, we got the budget approved, we did all those things, and we had the relationship with the player. So that really happened 2 years ago. We started, I guess it was 2 years ago, but only one off season other than this season. So, but during the season so it would have been the 23-24 season, we started planning ahead for summer. What do we want to do? Well, we knew we wanted to go overseas. It's something the Kings haven't done in a while, and other teams have had success. Tampa Bay, like they're unbelievable. Minnesota Wild, they're unbelievable. They're becoming wild and all these different things. So if you're looking at those of how successful they are, we were saying that's a huge gap in our storytelling. And so we started pitching more and more and more, putting an idea together of like, okay, we want to do this. We want to go visit our players in their hometowns, whether that's overseas or Canada or the US, whatever, we wanted to do that. So we put a list together of players to start. Hey, okay, it's Kevin Fiala, it's Anze Kopitar, it's Adrian Kempe, it's Mikey Anderson, right? And we thought, okay, well, here's four different activations. Two are in Europe, one's in Toronto, one's in Minneapolis. So they're all different levels. And we pitched that. It didn't really, it was going to be expensive. We didn't have the money. Whatever. Okay. Well, we in that pitching process, we said, here's the content we would pull from these. Here's roughly the amount of deliverables. Here's the crew and the staff that would go. Here's the rough budget. And also here's the story we're telling and why this story is important.
Yeah.
Adrian Kempe, hopefully he's here forever and he retires a king and he's a Hall of Famer and he's our top performer. Kevin Fiala, same thing with as Adrian, right? Anze Kopitar, Hall of Famer, legend of the organization. He's at the end of his career. We need to do that. Mikey Anderson, young player, shows a lot of leadership qualities. He's loved around, he's a great defenseman. He's a fan favorite. The team loves him. We can tell that story. He's US based, an American player. He's captain Team USA and World Juniors, things like that, right? And we pitched that. It didn't really work the first year. The second year, we were Quentin Byfield showed up, and then we signed Warren Fogle. And so we pitched similar players, but then all of a sudden we're like, well, Q and Fogs trained together in Toronto.
Mhm.
Oh, there's two. Let's just go and do that. So
One.
we put that together when that got approved last year. So we got a small thing. And we're like, okay, that's a win. And so then this year we brought back the big one where it was like Kempe, Fiala, Kopitar, Byfield. And we said, let's swing for the fences. Let's try to go to Europe. And all the forces aligned. And Kevin has a charity game that he's hosting for the first time. And he really wanted us to go. And we were involved in a certain fashion of helping get the logos and stuff like that for them. And it just worked out. And they got it approved. And we realized, like, hey, Kevin's here for at least 4 more years, hopefully longer. He's one of, if not the top scorer on our team.
Yeah.
He's a great personality. People love him. Let's go do it. And we did. And so that was a longer process. And this is, we're already starting thinking about, okay, Adrian Kempe, we want to go next year. How do we get that done? How do we show that this was so successful that we can do it again? So that's like, a much longer process. That's been, a
Oh,
year or two in the making. But then we've got the Bailey fake cologne commercial, and that
yeah.
just happened in like a 10-minute offshoot conversation between myself, Ryan, and Bailey. And we're talking with him, and he's like, I've always wanted to do this. And we're like, oh my God, yes, let's do it. They ran with it. The next day they were shooting. We got Isaiah Mustafa, famously the Old Spice guy,
Yeah.
to be VO because he's a friend of our, friend of
Wow.
the organization, and he loved it. He did it, and it turned out amazing. And we're gonna keep pushing that, and hopefully it's turned in now to more of an evergreen ticketing piece, right? Because it's tickets by LA Kings, and so now we're trying to do more and seeing how much we can blow this out. So that is now turned in. We did it backwards. We had the idea, did it, and now we're like, oh, shoot, we can do a whole campaign around this.
Yeah.
Let's plan this out more. And it's basically, well, the idea is done. How do we expand upon this?
Yeah.
So, two very different ways, but both successes in their own right.
And so for the latter, that's just kind of the producers like Ryan having agency to say, hey, if you have an interesting idea, you're
Yep.
sitting around brainstorming, bring it to us and let's see if we can do it. Have some fun, and ultimately, and in this case, becomes something that you can build on as well, and becomes a bigger marketing and ticket sales platform.
Right. And we wanted to have want the producers to have an innate green light, right?
Yeah.
And that obviously can get you in some, muddy waters when you need to rein someone in and be like, I need you to do this thing. Like this needs to be done. But, we look at it as like the risk is a little bit better. The risk is worth the reward of like, hey, we might lose a producer or two on a tangential project that like doesn't pay out, but most of the time it's going to work out in some fashion. But that's where we really hone it, like harp on communication. If you're communicating along the way, what you're doing, how you think about it, all these things, that's where if myself or our head of production, Phil Radke, if he's like, okay, this is getting really big. We do not have the time to do this right now. Let's reformat this for the summer, or let's reformat this for Olympic break, or whatever. Or maybe it's like, just we need to get this done. Let's come back to this in a week. It's open communication every step of the way. It should always be an open door.
Yeah.
I would rather have too much information because I think a lot of people think, well, if I'm always telling my boss something like or they're demanding it, it's not demand. It's I'm here to help set you up to do more creative stuff.
Yeah.
Come to me. I can solve those issues. I can go get budget approved. I can go and get the plan and tell, hey, marketing, we are going to change this around and do this thing next. Just so you know, like we're going to push the due date, or we're going to need an extra week for this, or and have those conversations so the creatives can stay creative. And I really hope I try to be that for our team.
Love that. Yeah, and I remember having Jason Levine, the SVP of the Chargers content on this podcast, and he talked about like one thing that they liked that they have this reputation as a place where creatives get to go and be creative and do these creatively ambitious things, and that
Yeah.
helps them attract more talent, and then people they get this reputation. It's a place where people feel privileged to go and work, and the Kings can develop a similar reputation where, hey, like if you're creative, and you want to work in sports, like the Kings are, you can do no worse than or no better than the Kings. Like you have opportunity to really stretch your legs there a little bit. And I want to understand too, like because there's so much different types of content, types of audience you're going to reach, types of engagements you're going to have. And I always talk about sort of like depth of engagement and impact of engagement. So like something like again to use these two examples because they're good different examples here. Something like the Kevin Fiala feature where you're gonna really learn about a player. You're gonna maybe get some cool random clips here and there from like what it's like being in Switzerland or him playing with some of his countrymen as you mentioned to me offline like Nico Hischier and some of those big games Nino Niederreiter. And that's for a certain sector of Kings fans, maybe to some degree hockey fans and Swiss hockey fans or hockey fans in general. But it may not be something like you could take that same budget, the same time, the same resources, and say and just have you guys spend all day creating 55 short form videos and we'll get millions of views because one or two of them are going to go viral. And that may be a certain KPI. We're going to look at our impressions, look at our number of views. Whereas something like the Fiala clip might not go viral, but the people that watch it are going to really feel something and really feel like they understand him. And there's different types. Like, so how do you think about like what success looks like in both those terms? How do you like balance that with the quote unquote KPIs, the numbers, the charts look like at the end of the season? Like, how does it all fit when it comes to really developing a more 360-degree, more comprehensive strategy?
One thing someone told me a long time ago, and I forget even who it was, but when you're presenting things back, you can't just present the quantitative evidence.
Hmm.
You need people learn all different ways. People understand performance and success in all different ways. And so when you're presenting something back, you need to be able to tell the anecdotal and the qualitative success or failures and the quantitative and the analytical successes and failures. And sometimes they may be in contention with each other.
Yeah.
And that's something where you are the expert. You have to explain why and why that might be okay or why it might not be okay. And so when we're looking at things, yes, numbers and analytics and all of the KPIs, those matter and they matter a ton. We work closely with our analytics team to be like, set those goals, how we're pacing against them, all those different things, right? But there's also an element of balance where, let's say, one of our black and whites, like our docu-series, we'll have a one or two, maybe two, three episodes a year really outpace the others. And those are generally the more interesting ones. Like we just released one that's pacing pretty well about the draft and has the phone call where Ken Holland and we traded Jordan Spence and he called Jordan. And it's an amazing piece of content, amazing piece of access. And that's doing really well. But we've also had really great storytelling pieces that might not be doing well. And why did we do those? I think the death of content and death of storytelling is drawing these hard lines in the sand about, well, if it doesn't hit this impression or this doesn't hit this thing, we're never doing this thing again. And it's hard because you talk to people in social and they're like, it's analytics, analytics, analytics. And yes, there's a sense of that, and there always should be, and they should help inform your decision making. I always hesitate to say drive and make your decision making because I think that's too black and white. No pun intended to our own series, but
Yeah.
it's much content is a gray area. Storytelling is a gray area. It's working with what you want. So what we look at is, yes, we're always looking at analytics. We have our paces, we have our KPIs, and generally we're hitting them, right? But there's also things we are accepting where it's like we're taking a risk that this might not perform, or it might perform, or whatever, it performs on average. But it's important to tell the story about our team or about the game or about this player because that is what helps drive fandom. And it's also the age-old question of how are you driving revenue? There's very clear buy tickets, buy tickets, buy tickets, and people will buy tickets, and that's great. But there's also a sense of we're telling the story about Kevin Fiala. There's probably a 10-year-old somewhere as a Kings fan, or maybe not a Kings fan, who's going to see on YouTube Shorts or Reels or TikTok this video that we're going to release about Kevin, or see this video that we released about Kevin and be like, oh my God, Kevin Fiala, I love him. They watch it. And then hopefully they go to their mom and they're like, I want to buy a Kevin Fiala jersey. I
Yeah.
want that for Christmas. And then they get that. And that's, you can't mark that, right? Like there's no way to monetize or commodify that. And I think that's the hardest thing in sports is convincing people, especially sales or upper level management, that what we're doing matters and what we're doing matters to the bottom line in the long run. So I always go back to when you're reporting something, you always want to give. I look at it as a one sheet. You give your numbers. I always like to start when I'm doing it is like here's our top 3 to 5 takeaways.
Hmm.
And they're boom, 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 right? Instagram top performer because people love this piece of content. Surprisingly, YouTube was a huge performer. Here's what we did 3 different thumbnails, whatever, right? Go through all those. Or this was a massive, women demographic that we weren't expecting.
Yeah.
Why here, whatever. And then you can break those down in a further thing, but then you have your analytics. and you do year over years or do a comp, or maybe there isn't a comp yet. So you're saying what, you know, this is pacing above our average. You know,
Mhm.
this is a higher engagement than our average across our channels. This has more views than our average video. And I think that always gives a complete picture. Because I think if you're only giving analytics, it's incomplete.
Totally. There's no context.
And if we're playing a pure analytics game, the team should just turn into a Bleacher Report or turn into a Barstool Sports where it's just an aggregator, right? Like they do their own content for sure, but most of the stuff is aggregating content and about this. And I think that's a hard line that teams need to look at. In there's a way to adapt those concepts and those strategies to what you want to do. We can't turn into an aggregator, but we can turn into what is working for aggregators. Well, maybe it's having a more informative title slide, or using carousels, or having on their page, on their feed, when someone's looking through, oh, look at that, I know what this reel is going to look like or what it's about, I can click on that. So it's taking those and learning from all different parts, because like I said, if you're only looking at the qualitative side, you're failing. If you're only looking at the quantitative side, you're failing. You have to look at a holistic picture of what your content is doing and how it's performing.
Love, so thoughtful. I really appreciate you going into that. And I mean, yeah, like we are not necessarily in the business of engaging audiences. We're in the yeah, that's part of it, but we're in the business of developing fans
Mhm.
and creating fans of our team. And like you can't live at the top of the funnel and just always be trying to attract the attention of the potential next fan. Like, what are you doing to make your current people that already you caught their attention? How are you turning them into fans? How are you making someone that notices you to like you? How do you make someone that likes you love you and become a lifelong fan? Become someone who's going to buy a jersey. Become someone who's going to become a multi-game attendee and a fan for life and engages with your content, comments on the YouTube videos. Like, yeah, we can't just live at the top of the funnel. Otherwise, no one will ever love you. You're just going to be someone that everyone knows about as whatever as some attractive thing, some aggregator as you mentioned as well. I want to get into this is already tremendous, Alec. I was talking to Alec Palmer, senior manager of social content for the LA Kings. I feel like we're just getting started here. So, but we have a little more to talk about. The Kings, as I alluded to before, anyone who knows the names like Dwayne Hankins or Pat Donahue, knows that the Kings have had a reputation for years. They kind of invented sarcasm on Twitter, for better or for worse. To everyone outside of BC, you're welcome. The famous tweet that kind of launched snark in social media, kind of. And so, like, when you came into the Kings, and this was, years ago now, like, what was your understanding of what the brand and voice and tone was? How was it conveyed to you? What kind of mandate was it to, hey, we're gonna stay, this is the voice and tone we have. We want to stay with this, or we're gonna maybe evolve it based on how we're playing, based on who's in our comm suite, who's our GM and our coach, like, and how was it like early on? How has it evolved either intentionally or unintentionally as you've been there?
So, yeah, I mean, Dwayne and Pat kind of started a lot of our industry, and I haven't actually gotten to meet either of them. I just kind of know them from the lore of the Kings, but a lot of people who worked with them and a lot of people who had worked on both of their teams were still around when I started. So I started at the end of 2021. And there were still a handful of people who were around kind of during that time. And, you know, when they started that, they were so ahead of their time. Like sports social is not where we are without, you know, you know, it, Duolingo isn't doing this ridiculous stuff. Wendy's isn't doing, all these different brands, even outside of sports, aren't doing this without, partially at least, the Kings pushing that boundary, right? And I think that's it's such a hard it's such a hard pedestal to live up to. But I think what has changed naturally over the years is that was so far ahead of its time, that was getting a lot of attention, right? But what changed was everyone kind of caught up. And so what originally had the Kings standing out and everybody knowing about them now became part of the noise, and everybody was kind of doing something similar.
Yeah.
And the Kings always have the legacy of doing it, and as sports, legacy doesn't win. Legacy isn't always what wins. It's a the Steelers have a great legacy, and there's a way of doing things that always stays, but every year to year that changes, right? The Steelers were known for their defense, and I love their defense, but the last, there was a while there, it was like they were not, it was all about their offense. Now it's coming back. So like it's always kind of that overarching kind of theme, but things change and maneuver and massage throughout every year. So as I came in, like I said, there's some people who were left over from that team and they were still around. And I came in, and the team wasn't very good
Mhm.
for the last years. As everybody knows, we haven't won a playoff series since 15.
The damn
And
Oilers.
yeah, 10 years, 10 years. And at that point, when I came in, the team was really bad. I had missed the playoffs for the last, what, 6 years, 5 years. And it was really tough. They're going through a rebuild. And what was happening was the sarcasm, the poke fun at ourselves, whatever, wasn't landing with fans as much.
Yeah.
And it started not to land internally as well. And, without getting into too many specifics, it was okay, well, we need to change this without losing this thing that got us here, right? And it's the same thing with the Kings. Like the Kings have been known forever as this like we're going to beat the living hell out of you on the ice. Our guys are bigger, faster, stronger than everyone. And we're going to play great defense and we're going to just grind you till you can't go anymore.
Yeah.
And that's how they won their cups.
Totally. Always been the physical team. Yeah.
Right. And that changed, right? And that has changed and will change. But there's always this mindset, right? So that's kind of how we approached it was, okay, well, like we can't lose this entire funny, sarcastic, fun personality, but we have to make some changes to better suit what's happening on the ice. So we overcorrected right away to kind of peel so much back. And I was like, let's just start fresh almost.
Mhm.
Let's pull back, and it's going to be kind of uncomfortable to start. It's going to be frustrating. Let's pull back right away to just like a very like cookie cutter. Let's start getting back to the team and let's reintroduce things because we had no idea where that line was anymore. We had no idea where the line was that was too much or too little. So we had to reintroduce and kind of build and build and build and re-hit that boundary and re-hit that line. So over the years, we stripped that back and we started adding it in. And what I found was we were swinging for the fences every single time. We were like a 30 home run hitter who has like a 200 batting average. It's like eventually you're just hurting. We're just hurting that person. Like it was just hurting the team.
Yeah.
And I realized let's just swing for doubles, right? Let's swing for doubles. Let's make contact. And like some things are going to go well, some things aren't, but we're going to live in that middle just for the time being. And we keep adding. We add elements to our game, right? We adding those power hitters. We're adding those. We're getting bigger. We're getting stronger, right? As the team got better, we were able to do more and more and more. And we've now developed this kind of voice of we are the best. And this idea of we're going to beat you up. We're not arrogant. We're confident in what we do. We're going to grind you out on the ice. We're going to be able to just, push through you, and we're bigger, better, faster, stronger. And so this mindset of being that on the ice, we thought, how can we relate that to our social presence?
Yeah.
And we kind of operate, and this is more internally of like, it's not quote unquote our written social strategy on the wall, but we operate as be a fan, be intentional, and be excellent. And so you never want to feel like you're talking at the fans. And there's times you're going to have to, right? Like when the team's not doing well or whatever, you have to kind of talk at them and they're not going to love it, but it's what happens. But you want to ride the wave with them. You never want to get, we get so excited and like you do kind of get too high sometimes, but like that's okay. But you never want to get too low and ride it down with them.
Yeah.
It's a time where, okay, like, all right, we understand we can't do anything about this as the social team. So, like, let's not try to just get real down in the dumps, but we also don't want to lie to them and gaslight them in a way of like, 2 years ago when we were on like our 2 wins and 17 game streak or whatever, there was a point where I was like, we can't spin this anymore. Let's
Totally.
just deliver the news, let people react. We'll get out of this and it'll be fine. And we did. We made the playoffs and all of that. But the second part, I said, be a fan. You want to ride that wave a little bit. You want them to feel excited. You want them to feel like, oh my God, like if we're all in a room and the Kings were a person, they're jumping up and down when we have a huge OT win. And yeah, it might be a random game against the Capitals in January, but this crazy OT winner that just happened, be excited about it. Who cares? Like, don't have this like cringe, like, oh my God, that's, it's always relax. It's January. It's like, who cares? A win is a win, and we beat you, and we're going to be excited. And it was insane. So be a fan is one. Be intentional. We don't, and this is a really big focus for us this year, is we don't want to put things out just to put them out. We want to focus on being intentional about what we do. We want to have every single thing we post mean something and if meaning something and being towards a goal, being focused on a goal, that might be we need to sell tickets and
Yeah.
we need to post this graphic and we need to post this video because we need to sell tickets for this game. And that's okay. But we want to be intentional about what we're doing every step of the way. And sometimes that can mean not jumping on a trend
Mhm.
that might happen, or sometimes that can mean doing a couple extra things on the more administrative side for ticketing or for foundation or whatever. That might not be the best, but we know we need to do it and we should do it. And then be excellent. Excellence isn't excellence isn't the destination. It's, whatever the saying is, right? Like excellence is a destination, but perfection is destination, but you'll find excellence along the way or
Right, right,
something.
right.
I don't know what I'm probably butchering that to all hell, but what we think is like we should be pursuing excellence every single time. And excellence is different. That doesn't mean making a movie level production every time, but everything we make should be excellent for what it is. So if we're making a funny TikTok, that TikTok should be excellent based on what that TikTok should be. Like it
Yeah.
should be fulfilling, right? Don't do things half-assed. Don't just jump into something and be like, yeah, whatever, we don't care about it. That's not helping anybody, right? So those are the three main things we really focus on. And our tone now is like when we swing, we're gonna bury you. Like, we're not in the business of trying to be funny every step of the way and try to be quirky and clever every single time. And what we don't usually, it's very few cases, we never make a joke at the expense of attacking a single player
Mhm.
on another team. We try not to do anything about the people or the city because it's just too broad. We're
Totally.
trying to pump ourselves up
Yeah.
unless it's invited. For example, I always look as I'm seeing the Ducks is when Phoenix Copley 2 years ago, John Gibson, the big brawl, and John Gibson slapping his stick trying to entice Phoenix, and the refs held him back, and there's this crazy photo. And the Ducks posted it and said Copley didn't want the smoke. And it just fired us up, and we responded. Phoenix Copley has more wins than you do all season. And it was true. He had like 29 wins. They had like 25
Oh,
wins.
that hurts.
And it just and I said like that's an example of like if we're gonna play this game, we better come out winning. And we're gonna hit the wall. We're gonna overstep sometimes and we're gonna get that slap on the wrist. Um, but that's when you know. And it's like what I said is like if we're coming up to the plate, we're gonna swing. We're not just gonna get up there and just every time just try to just every single thing we do try to be get the next viral tweet because
Right.
our brand is more important than virality. So how can we build our brand? How can we do that? But like I said, like if we're gonna go for it, we're going for it.
Hell yeah. Super articulate. So, so good, man. And when it comes to like building tone and voice in 2025, or even like what you've noticed in the last few years as well, what does that look like now? I mean, I think if we were talking 5, 6, 7 years ago, it's like, well, your voice is mostly established on Twitter and maybe to some degree, maybe your Instagram captions or whatnot. So like, what do you think about what it means to establish a voice and tone now? How does that actually get illustrated and played out? And maybe Twitter is still a big part of that, but other places as well. And then a random aside with that too is, have you actually noticed the last 2, 3 years? Twitter going down in average reach, average engagement, and as sort of like the narratives have and are largely true that there have been some people leaving Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, to answer that part, it's easy. Yeah, I think we've seen the same thing, but when big moments happen, that's still the first place people go. Maybe
Yeah,
it's out of habit and maybe it isn't, but Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, those are things we're focusing on. Those are the three big channels that we're looking at because that's where people get all their stuff. I mean, some really incredible presentations at our NHL meetings from YouTube, from Meta, those different people like hearing about that, talking with other people, like that's where this industry is going. And not to ever lose Twitter because I think it's the foundation. It's,
yeah, it's still
built people's
strong in
town
sports.
square.
Like as much people are
Right.
leaving, sports fans are largely still there.
And Blue Sky and all that stuff will never, Threads will never replace Twitter. And it just because it's so ingrained into our
Yeah.
society. But finding voice, defining voice, all those different things, I think it's way different, right? Like it's not, think about it now, like people aren't just, th there's two sides. Fans aren't interacting with every platform you're on,
Mm,
but they're also not only interacting with one. So it has to be consistent in a sense, but it has to be tailored to those different things. Twitter is so much more conversational, right? Like
yeah.
it's right away you're tweeting, people respond, whatever. You can do that, kind of throw some tweets out there, like, I don't know, let's see what happens, whatever. Instagram is more curated. Instagram is that. TikTok is, the Wild West still. People have no, yeah. But it's a copycat league, right? People try to just copy each other and find out what's working. But when I look at voice or tone and everything, that's bigger than just the words you're writing.
Yeah.
It should come through in your content, right? It should come through in what you're creating. Because if you're a team, and I wouldn't name any, but I can't think of any off the top of my head of like, they have these really produced, beautiful videos and all this stuff. And then their caption is just like kind of nonsensical or like garbage.
Yeah.
It's a disconnect. And you're like, well, what is this brand? And vice versa. Like if your caption is very like, straight up and down, like by the book, and then you have this really ridiculous, nonsensical content, there's a disconnect. It has to be continuous, it has to be connected. And I think that's where it can change. And I'll go back to it. If your strategy, if your tone is just trying to be trendy and quirky and chase those trends all the time, it's kind of like a dog, right? Like, oh, it's just shiny thing, it's just jumping, and you never really know. But it's funny because I commend the Chargers. They're probably one of the best examples of like having that. That's their brand. That's
Yeah.
their brand on the field. That's their brand on their content. That's their
Totally.
brand on their caption. And if you are not prepared as an organization to commit wholeheartedly to that, it will disconnect. And I think that's why it's so impressive and why it has staying power for the Chargers. But you see other teams, brands, people, whatever, trying to mimic that and imitate that, but their content and the rest of the organization isn't bought in. And so that's where that difference is. And I don't think anybody can pull that off, right? Megan and them over there do an unbelievable job. And that's what they have done and built, and they have total buy-in. That doesn't always happen. So that's where it's curating what your team and your organization wants.
Yeah.
And that is such a big part of it because if we're doing this funny, quirky, whatever, and then our GM or our front office is giving these very hardline stances, again, fans are seeing both and they're like, well, I don't really know what it is. So it's all about consistency to me.
Let's touch on that briefly around because Ken, you mentioned Ken Holland is your GM now. That's a change from previous seasons when Rob Blake was the GM for many years. At the top, you guys have had different coaches here and there as well, although it's been more stable than the other franchises. But like, what's it like when a new GM comes in, or are you still kind of living it and kind of you're gonna suss it out as the season goes on? Like, is the GM into the vibe they're putting out there, the brand they're putting out there, even the type of access you might get to players on a game day, on a non-game day, in the room. Like, how is that transition period like?
So, I mean, I think access is something that's ever fluctuating and that'll always change between GMs. And, Blakey was awesome. He was such a great guy to work with. And it was so, so cool to interact with him. And I'll never forget him saying that one came up and he's like, oh, my daughter showed me some of the TikToks you guys do. That's pretty good stuff. And I was like, that's
That's the best.
but when a new GM comes in, things do change. We're still, I haven't had a ton of FaceTime and talked to Ken a whole lot. And he's been great at any time I've interacted with him, and we've gotten great access. And but I owe that more to our relationship with our PR team, our PR and hockey ops team. Something we really have grown that over the last few years, and that is huge in terms of access. They know they can trust when socials in the room or production or whatever we're pitching an idea, it is for the greater good.
Yeah.
And we have to know that not every idea is approved. Not every idea is approved as is, or maybe some are outright rejected. But that trust has been massive. The thing I attribute it most to is we show up. People ask, why don't you take a game off? Or why'd you go to practice? Who cares? It's a Saturday. We are at every practice, we are at every game, we're at almost every event. And because what that does is show hockey ops, that shows the players, that shows the coaches, that shows the trainers and the people who are around. We're in it with them. And we're not taking days off or we're not doing these things because we want to take a break. We are, when it's in the season, we're around all the time. We want them to be comfortable with us. We want the players to know who we are, not for any personal gain,
Yeah.
but for them to know that we're not trying to screw them over. We're not trying to do any of that. So that's where that has always, and we never had an issue or we never had a concern with any kind of GM change or regime change because the people who can vouch for us are still here. The people who can sit here and say, hey, actually, they're pretty good. We'll meet with them. We talk with them. The players like them.
Yeah.
They know they're not going to screw us over. So it's always building trust. And it's knowing that trust can be broken at any point. And that's a lot of pressure, but it's having feel. And that's something we look at. So I think it's less, GM to GM or regime to regime. It's more how have we built our relationship with our PR team, our hockey ops team, our PR, that stuff, and the players, and that's where we get accepted. So, like I said, my biggest advice is to show up, and I set that expectation with our team. Hey, we're at every practice, we're at every skate, we're at every game, but we take our time in the off season. We take our time when the team has a day off. We
Yeah.
take that time, whatever. So it's a lot, but that's an expectation that some people may balk at and be like, well, there's no work-life balance. And I'm like, if I wanted more work-life balance, I have my work-life balance. It's not one day in, one day out. It's whatever I feel is appropriate and whatever our team. And I listen to our team and like, hey, I'm exhausted. I'm staying home. Great. Stay home. That's okay. Like I said, it's communication and showing up.
No, totally. I think that's like I want to I put an exclamation point on that because I think that there's a certain level of it's maybe not spoken, but there's a level of respect that when the players see you there every single time, they're like, okay, this guy's grinding as much as I am. Like they're here at practice, they're here at games, like they're here as late and early as I am, and there's a certain level of respect that comes along with that as well. In addition to the trust you gain over time as you don't screw them over or don't put them in a bad light as well.
Right.
When it comes to marketing the players also, and we touched on this a little before we started recording, that the Kings are in this interesting like phase between generations of players where you still have some of the legends of the Cup years with Drew Doughty and Anze Kopitar, and then you have this up and coming generation. You mentioned Mikey Anderson becoming a leader on the scene the last few years. Adrian Kempe hopefully signing a big ticket deal to be a King for life. Quentin Byfield is someone that we talked about as well, who kind of represents maybe the successor to Anze Kopitar in some ways, and he went through his growing pains of like, and so like both in general of how do you think about marketing players over time, and along with developing fans of the Kings, you want to develop fans of this new generation of players, and then to a lesser extent too, I would love to touch on what that's like handling a Quentin Byfield when he's kind of up and down, and it's like, okay, we want to market this guy as a star player, but we don't want to set fan expectations too high. We want to make him feel like he's like not living up to a certain standard that the fans are expecting because we position him as a superstar player. So I know a loaded question there around marketing these players in general, and then I'd love to double click on the Quentin Byfield experience in general as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's very apropos you're asking because that's something we go through every day. Yeah. Quentin Byfield, Brant Clark, Alex Laferriere, like these younger players that are coming up, and we've got great goalies coming up in our pipeline too. So we have that conversation all the time of how do we balance this with showing how good these players are and people being excited about them with putting so much undue pressure on them. Quentin is someone we don't have to do that at all about because the whole national media and Canada, all these different things, right? He's on team, has been invited about Team Canada. Maybe he'll make the Olympics. We hope. Who knows? But he gets a lot of that. But there's other players. It's like, how do we do that? And that's something we ask every day. And I think what we've kind of landed on is we can always show and talk about them, but how can we build them up as human beings? How can we build them up as personalities too? Because that's really never going to change. And I say that hesitantly because sometimes it does, but we want people to love them and be fan favorites, right? We don't, and that's where you're really converting the jerseys and the tickets and the followings and whatever. So Quentin, we're always trying to show his personality. He's fun and goofy and happy and all this, and he works really hard and all this stuff, and try to disconnect it in a sense from their on ice performance
Hmm.
because that's where we found it's like people love a guy like Adrian Kempe, and when he's doing great, people love him so much more. But they love him so much as a person and as a player that even when he's doing bad, they're still rooting for him. I
Unconditional
think
love. Yeah.
yes. And so that's what we're trying to get. And it's not always 100%, right? But how do we keep building them up as they're hard, they're working hard, they're never satisfied, they're a great person, they've got a great family, they've got all this stuff because I think that kind of protects them a little bit from that pressure.
Yeah.
You're never gonna be able to protect them completely. Like they know, and the part of their contract, quote, not actually in their contract, but like part of them knowing of what comes into being a professional athlete is we have to market you. There's gonna be pressure, so it can't just be being quiet about them and never talking about them, even if that's what they want all the time, because we need to promote that. So it's a balance and it's case by case, right? Like, with Quentin specifically, like he blew up. He's got these highlight reel plays, but he's still developing.
Yeah.
And it's hard to balance that being like, hey, he's not even close to his ceiling yet. And that's not a bad thing. Like, if this is his not close to his ceiling, what the hell's his ceiling going to look like? Like, we believe in him more than anyone. And
Yeah.
that's where we need him to take that next step, right? That's something the organization has said. Like, once he takes that next step and he does, it's going to be even better. But that pressure is going to grow and grow and grow. And if people want, if you want to be a true superstar, that comes with the territory a little bit. So we do our best to go case by case, work with our PR team because they have the pulse, right? They're talking to the players every day, and they can come back and be like, I am exhausted from media. Like, can we like pull some back, or can we not do this, or can I do this at a different time or whatever? And that's communication. And I don't have a lot of that communication. Obviously, that's our PR team, but that's also on ours where we're building that trust. If they're like, hey, we have this great idea to do with Quentin, and they're like, he's done so much media this week. Can we like wait a week or two? And we're like, yeah, for sure. Or if it's like we need to push, we can push, right? So that's all the trust that we build with our PR team.
No, totally. And yeah, for Quentin Byfield in particular, it's like he's like as when he was getting panned in the media at times, it's like, yo, he's still we drafted him like 2 or 3 years ago, and he's still younger than some of the guys getting drafted now. It's like, come on. So it's super super interesting perspective to hear all that. A couple more quick things before we'll share we'll stat, Alec. I promise I can keep you for hours more, but I know the season's about to start, so we can't wait too long.
Yeah.
But you guys are in LA. It's a crowded marketplace. There's the Lakers, the Dodgers, the Clippers, the Sparks. And, it's so so crowded. But you guys are kind of that part of that sort of Hollywood team. You're in the center of LA. You play a crypto. You have LA Live right next door. You have celebrities coming to your games. So when it comes to active, like when a celebrity comes to your game, or when you even do stuff with like influencers, I would love to touch on the schedule release as well, along those lines. When there's an opportunity like that to whether it's just showing on the video board, look at Will Ferrell's behind the glass at our game or whatever. And actually, I know Will Ferrell had a really interesting appearance this past year with the Buddy the Elf costume. But like, what kind of opportunity is that and again, whether it's coordinated and we're gonna have an influencer come to the game, or it's gonna be a celebrity appearance, or it's unexpected. What is the opportunity there, and what does it look like to really execute and get the most out of those opportunities?
Yeah, so with influencers and celebrities, yes, we are in Hollywood. We're in LA. It's it's unique because I think I'll talk to people who are in maybe smaller markets and they're like, I would kill to have this celebrity. And it's like, it's great. But it's also like at the end of the day, like people aren't coming to see which celebrities are in the stands. They're still coming to see the hockey. So there's a delicate balance we have to play of like, okay, well, we want to post about this player or this celebrity, this influencer, but like we're getting smoked right now. So like, how do you balance that? Or we don't want to take away like this game's amazing and then we got to do this. So it's like it's having that balance. And we got to a really good point last year where we were really focusing on that. But the second part is we are unique that we have so many, and we basically have a list of influencers and celebrities that come to every single home game. So that's something we can be like, okay, well, we're bringing in influencers too to get into their audience, and there's no collaboration from the Kings necessarily. So we may bringing them in and they're creating. We basically give them the access
Mhm.
to be in the VIP areas or whatever, and they're creating a reel or TikTok or photos or whatever. So it's different. We want to get into their world and have them show their people like, oh my God, look how fun this was. This Kings game is crazy. You need to come. But also, there's a sense when we get big celebrities or have good ideas or whatever, getting and using them and using their name to get into our fans. And people are always like, I don't care who this is. I care about the hockey team. It's like, yeah, but it's not for you. Obviously, this post is obviously not for you.
Yeah.
But the other 50,000 people that like this post, that is for them. So it's a balance and knowing that there'll always be a little bit of backlash. So yes, we want to be star-studded and have this premiere and all this stuff, but at the core of it, it needs to show how amazing hockey is and how amazing our experience is and the players and every person who comes, like even we've had rappers and singers, artists, whatever, celebrities, and they're like, this is my first game. This is unbelievable. And they're texting us the next day, can I come back? And we're like, yeah, of course you can come back anytime. And I think that's the best part is like making genuine fans out of them. And it might start as a PR thing of like, let me get this person. And then they're like, oh my God, this was amazing, right? Like, I'm coming back. Absolutely, I'm coming back to this. Just we find out sometimes that um, we'll be working with a new celebrity or whatever. And they're like, I've been buying tickets for years. I just come to games just on my own. And we're like, what the hell? Like, and like we appreciate that so much because they're genuine, like they're genuine
Yeah.
fans, and then that makes it so much better. So it's a little bit of that, and then when we do influencer work, whether it's our schedule release with the Dan and Chris from Empty Netters, or Ryan Goldshire, our schedule release 2 years ago, or other influencer content that might happen, like our promo we had. Her name's slipping out of my mind right now, but she made a jacket for country night, right, out of a jersey. So those are all different things and they're curated on purpose to help support a project or help support an initiative or campaign or something like that. And they have their own set of KPIs and things we want to do, but it's to get in that audience and show and people who follow us and like, oh my God, like our schedule release got way outside of our world. And that was the best thing that could have happened because at the end of the day, we didn't give them any information. Like you watch our schedule release, you would have no idea when we
It was
play.
still good, dude, by the way.
And that was on purpose because we're like, no one's watching these videos to find out the schedule because you know where they're going? lakings.com/schedule.
Yeah.
That's going to be it. And you're going to download it, add to your calendar, whatever. So we're going to have graphics that support it. But like at the end of the day, this is for entertainment. This isn't so we can tell you when our schedule is because you're not watching a video and then going, oh, that's when they play. No, you're going to go to the schedule, go to the app, whatever. So, they all have their own unique kind of twists and turns and ideas, but it is unique to be here, to be here and in the thick of it, and we have some really amazing opportunities because of it.
Love it. No, I appreciate that. Everyone talks about having like an influencer strategy or like how can we take advantage of the fact that the celebrities come into our game. But
Yeah,
it's one thing to just talk about it, another thing to actually execute and do it and have a plan to make the most of it.
right.
Well, Alec, there's so much more we need to hit on. We're going to go into overtime with our one-timer segment coming up. First episode, shareable stat coming at you right now. Man, I'm still beaming with just how great that interview was. It's tremendous stuff, really thoughtful. With Alec Palmer, senior manager of social content for the LA Kings, just so articulate, so good at explaining what his thought process is, explaining how they do things at the organization. Just cannot be more thrilled with how that interview went. I hope you learned a lot because I sure did. But stick around because we're gonna have some more fun with Alec and get more insights and stories in our one-timer segment for this episode's shareable stat. And Central Service Stat came from a recent survey of marketers and how they're thinking about approaching sports sponsorships. And there's a couple of stats I'll share with you from this article. First is that around one quarter, 28% actually, so more than a quarter, said their brands had never done sports sponsorships, but in 2025 they were planning to enter sports sponsorships for the first time. So more new entrants. We see that, of course, in the women's sports space. We see that really in general with sports as we get better activating partners as sports becomes continues to become the sort of last bastion of live content and of course a place where emotion intertwines with everything and with all the content. So first, that's an interesting stat. More than one-fourth will be new entrants into the sports sponsorship marketplace. But one other interesting stat, which probably is the biggest takeaway, is that over three-fourths, 76% of marketers who spent on sports sponsorships in the last year said they found it difficult to determine the ROI of those sponsorships. Difficult to say they agree that they see business growth. They do understand that it does drive positive results, whether that is brand equity, earned media value, consideration of the product or service, but they still found it difficult to ultimately determine ROI. And so, what does that mean for you if you work in sports or in or around sports? Well, it's that we're all still kind of figuring it out. Even the ones who are spending money and who have a good feeling and see bottom line metrics moving in the right direction when they spend on sponsorship, still are having trouble actually nailing down their ROI. There's no shortage of solutions out there. I've worked personally with Zoom, with Blink Fire Analytics as well. And there's plenty of others, Relo, lots of others out there that try to at least measure the value of sports sponsorship, whether on social or linear or out of home or really across the board. But even then, these marketers who are in this marketplace, who are actually writing the checks and signing the checks, spending money, still aren't quite sure how to do it. So what does that mean for us? It means we can help tell these stories, help connect those dots. It takes a little bit of work and effort on both sides oftentimes, whether that is getting more savvy with data, understanding how you can create activations and partnerships that do draw a more direct line, or at least help them connect the dots to the bottom line. As mobile and social came up the last decade plus overall, no, there are no experts in this space. This place hasn't been around for generations. And so we're still trying to figure out what are the best ways to storytell. And as Alec talked about in his interview, actually, going back to our interview with Alec Palmer, it's a combination of qualitative and quantitative. It is about telling that story. It is about showing the metrics in a context where it makes sense, where you can start to connect those dots. So the good news is that, again, this 76% who have trouble determining ROI still agree with the statements that the sports sponsorship deals are moving the needle in a positive direction and are boosting earned media value, are boosting consideration and brand equity. So the more we can think about the ways to determine this in a more quantitative way to combine with a qualitative way, surveys, more savvy data, mixing of data in clean rooms. This space is evolving very quickly, but super interesting stat to consider, think about, talk about, ponder. So again, those two stats that we offered, more than 28% said their brands had never done sports sponsorships before, but plan to in 2025 when the survey was taken. And then 76% of marketers who spent on sports sponsorships said they found it difficult to determine ROI. So super interesting, but here he is back with Alec Palmer for our one-timer segment. Man, I'm still beaming with just how great that interview was. It's tremendous stuff, really thoughtful. With Alec Palmer, senior manager of social content for the LA Kings, just so articulate, so good at explaining what his thought process is, explaining how they do things at the organization. Just cannot be more thrilled with how that interview went. I hope you learned a lot because I sure did. But stick around because we're gonna have some more fun with Alec and get more insights and stories in our one-timer segment for this episode's shareable stat. And Central Service Stat came from a recent survey of marketers and how they're thinking about approaching sports sponsorships. And there's a couple of stats I'll share with you from this article. First is that around one quarter, 28% actually, so more than a quarter, said their brands had never done sports sponsorships, but in 2025, they were planning to enter sports sponsorships for the first time. So more new entrants. We see that, of course, in the women's sports space. We see that really in general with sports as we get better activating partners, as sports continues to become the sort of last bastion of live content, and of course, a place where emotion intertwines with everything and with all the content. So first, that's an interesting stat. More than one-fourth will be new entrants into the sports sponsorship marketplace. But one other interesting stat, which probably is the biggest takeaway, is that over three-fourths, 76% of marketers who spent on sports sponsorships in the last year said they found it difficult to determine the ROI of those sponsorships. Difficult to say they agree that they see business growth. They do understand that it does drive positive results, whether that is brand equity, earned media value, consideration of the product or service, but they still found it difficult to ultimately determine ROI. And so, what does that mean for you if you work in sports or in or around sports? Well, it's that we're all still kind of figuring it out. Even the ones who are spending money and who have a good feeling and see bottom line metrics moving in the right direction when they spend on sponsorship, still are having trouble actually nailing down their ROI. There's no shortage of solutions out there. I've worked personally with Zoom, with Blink Fire Analytics as well. And there's plenty of others, Relo, lots of others out there that try to at least measure the value of sports sponsorship, whether on social or linear or out of home or really across the board. But even then, these marketers who are in this marketplace, who are actually writing the checks and signing the checks, spending money, still aren't quite sure how to do it. So what does that mean for us? It means we can help tell these stories, help connect those dots. It takes a little bit of work and effort on both sides oftentimes, whether that is getting more savvy with data, understanding how you can create activations and partnerships that do draw a more direct line or at least help them connect the dots to the bottom line. As mobile and social came up the last decade plus overall, no, there are no experts in this space. This place hasn't been around for generations. And so we're still trying to figure out what are the best ways to storytell. And as Alec talked about in his interview, actually, going back to our interview with Alec Palmer, it's a combination of qualitative and quantitative. It is about telling that story. It is about showing the metrics in a context where it makes sense, where you can start to connect those dots. So the good news is that, again, this 76% who have trouble determining ROI still agree with the statements that the sports sponsorship deals are moving the needle in a positive direction and are boosting earned media value, are boosting consideration and brand equity. So the more we can think about the ways to determine this in a more quantitative way to combine with a qualitative way, surveys, more savvy data, mixing of data in clean rooms. This space is evolving very quickly, but super interesting stat to consider, think about, talk about, ponder. So again, those two stats that we offered, more than 28% said the brands had never done sports sponsorships before, but planned to in 2025 when the survey was taken. And then 76% of marketers who spent on sports sponsorships said they found it difficult to determine ROI. So super interesting, but here he is back with Alec Palmer for our one-timer segment. Back from the episode's Charitable Stat, and I'm joined once again by Alec Palmer, Senior Manager of Social Content for the Los Angeles Kings. Alec, you kicked ass in your interview, just tremendous insight, great knowledge. Are you now ready to take some one-timers?
I am. I'm as ready as I'll ever be, I'm
Hell
sure.
yeah. Do you get out there on skates ever? Have you played a bit?
I haven't played. I can skate in circles. It's one of my things. I'm like, I have to learn how to skate. I bought skates with a game used sale, so I bought some like pro
Nice.
stock, really nice skates. But I just need to learn how to stop. You can only go as fast as how well you can stop. So once I do that, I'll feel pretty good.
Hell yeah. And you can always nothing wrong with ball hockey as well and skate
Exactly.
hockey.
Exactly.
All right, let's do it with some one-timers. First, number one, going back to your time at Momentum. Tell me your favorite project that you worked on while you were there.
Favorite project had to have been when COVID shut everything down. We hosted a live wiffle ball
I
game
remember that.
with MLB players who are still in Arizona during spring training. So the MLB shut everything down, obviously because of COVID, and there's a bunch of players out there who still didn't know what to do. And we had the idea of like, wouldn't it be insane if we live streamed a wiffle ball game? And so in 48 hours or so, maybe 72 hours max we orchestrated, we found a location, we got all the players involved, we got sponsors, we got, ESPN was reporting on it. It was the only live sporting event in the world at that time. And we had, I think, a few 100,000 viewers
Yeah.
over it. And it was so much fun, so insane that we did it. And yeah, it was a blast. It was a blast to do it.
That's so awesome. Dude, I have a vivid memory of being in Arizona actually at a bachelor party right before like that everything really shut down. We were originally going to go to spring training games and we were all huddled around my laptop watching a live stream of that game. That's so cool. I have great memories of that. So kudos to you and your team there at Momentum.
Thank you. Thank you.
Number two, you mentioned spending some time as an adjunct professor. So tell me the most important insight or lesson that you want to impart to students, and also the biggest thing that you learned from these young students.
The biggest kind of most gratifying thing from that was you really felt like you were affecting the world and like affecting the greater good a little bit. And I think that when you're working in sports, like, yeah, we're all, thinking we're doing a lot of great stuff and entertaining people, and for sure we are. But um when you would see a student go on and do something or go get a job or whatever, and you really did feel like you were impacting them. And I thought that was the most amazing thing. And then when you'd see them, they'd call you or email you, text you, be like, "Oh my God, I got this job," or "I got this interview," or whatever. You're just so proud. So I think that was like one of the best things. And the advice I always, gave them on the way out was companies don't hire people, or companies don't hire resumes, they hire people.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how great your resume is and how many things you have on, and how perfect it looks and all that stuff. And the resume will get through the HR screen or whatever, but you have to have a good resume. But at the end of the day, people want to work with good people, nice people that are fun to work with, that are committed and passionate. And it rings true to this day. Throughout the corporate world is people need to be you need to be a good person when you're working, and you will last much longer. You'll get much more opportunities when you're pleasant to work with, when you bring a good attitude, when you show up and you work hard and you look out for other people. And
Yeah.
I think that's something that I was like, that is the most important thing that you can take out of this is doing that. So I hope they all took my advice.
Hell yeah. And you see that in any industry. There's very few people that work in a complete silo. You work with others. It
Yep.
plays out in the NHL too. You want to find
Exactly.
good teammates as well.
Yeah.
Number three, this will be a fun one. Tell me the most viral social post from your time with the Kings, and also the post that surprised you the most in its performance.
Our most viral post, we had a couple. When the Dodgers won the World Series, we had a video that went crazy. That was great. But I mean, like it was a good post, but like that was like just jumping on the Dodgers a little bit.
Yeah, you
Uh,
guys like were showing the in the arena, showing the.
yeah,
I remember
yeah.
that.
The other two I think were when we actually played the Ducks, and they tweeted about how Phoenix Copley didn't want to fight John Gibson, which he very much did if you saw the photo. Um, and they tweeted that Copley didn't want to fight him or didn't want the smoke, and we responded with Phoenix Copley has more wins than you do all season. And that was true. He had like 25 wins or whatever, 29, and they had less. So that killed. When the Lakers traded for Luca, we had just finished our game, and we had no idea, obviously,
Yeah,
had posted "Good night, Kings fans" with like a couple photos from the game, and then half an hour later, Shams breaks the trade, and we quote tweeted that right away. I was on the plane. I quote tweeted it and said, Actually, wake up! The Lakers got Luca." And like it was a good, like I thought it was good and it'd do fine.
yeah.
That blew up more than I ever thought it would. Um, so it's funny to look back. It's like one of our top five best performing posts in the last couple, or like last year, maybe last two. And I was like, when I posted it, I was like, it'll do fine. Like people will laugh, but it caught on. And it's funny because like we kind of broke the news to a lot of people.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting.
And it was funny because like it wasn't even official to the next day. And after I sent that, I'm like, oh my God, what if this is fake? What if it falls through? Like I was panicking. I was like, what if the Lakers are mad? Maybe they were. I don't know. No one ever talked to me about it. So yeah, did those. Those are the
That's
ones that
awesome. I mean, it's really remarkable too that arguably the two most famous Slovenians in the world both ply their trade at the same arena. It's
exactly.
unreal now between Anze Kopitar and now Luka Doncic.
I know. I know. It's
Crazy.
crazy.
Next one for you. You mentioned playing some D3 baseball. So tell us, give us a scouting report of Alec Palmer, the baseball player, the pitcher.
Oh God. Yeah, I was a low 80s pitcher who relied on their off speed. In high school and then in college, I started more in high school and I was always in the bullpen in college, and I loved that. I loved that intensity and like getting ready in that moment comes down to you. I didn't end up playing a whole ton because I ended up getting hurt and
Right.
stuff. Yeah, I mean, I had a great changeup, great curveball. I loved kind of being that cerebral, like, um, battle with the batters,
Yeah.
and it was always fun. I loved it. I loved the camaraderie. I can't throw really anymore. It just hurts so bad. I pitched in our alumni games a couple
Oh,
times, and I hit so many guys. Uh, but it was fun. I love it, and I even though it wasn't on the field that I owe my career, I owe my now career to the people I met. I mentioned Coach Harrison, Coach
totally.
DeAngelo. All my best friends were on that team. So yeah,
All part of the story, and it's really cool how things came together the way they were supposed to,
yeah,
and here you are today. It's awesome.
exactly.
All right, this is a fun one for you. Number five, Alec. Take us through the virality that was I'll call them the harmonica ladies from this the last year's series against the Oilers. Like, when did you know that something was happening that was bigger than expected, and how'd you guys go about like capitalizing on that momentum?
Yeah, so earlier in the season in March, we had our K-Town night, our Koreatown night,
Mhm.
and they were looking for anthem singers, and normally try to get someone if it's a heritage night of that heritage or who's important to that community, and if they're famous, great. If not, like we give back to the community. So we ended up getting connected with the Koreatown Senior Center of LA, and they said we have a harmonica class, and we're like, yeah, why not? And like it's a March game against the Bruins, like it's K Town, whatever. Like we didn't have another option, like we couldn't find anybody else. So my boss Sean Tabler, who oversees all of our in game, they find them, they source them, they bring them out, and it starts, and everyone's like, oh my God, like what is happening here? And like some fans are giggling or being like, what? And then all of a sudden, like 5 seconds in, whole arena just starts belting out the anthem. That has never happened before
Yeah.
at Kings. Like Chicago Blackhawks level singing the anthem. And they're singing it. And it was like a magical moment. Like I was getting goosebumps being like, oh my God, like this is so cool. We ended up, I'm pretty sure we ended up beating the brakes off the Bruins that game. Like,
Yeah.
and we're like, oh my God, like this was amazing. So whatever had happened, we didn't think anything of it. Later on, we're preparing for the playoffs, and I forget if it was like a day or two, a couple days before. But we're in a meeting, and Sean goes, "We're going through all the stuff for game one because we hadn't hosted like since we haven't hosted a playoff game, game one. I mean, in the whole time against the Oilers
Yeah.
these 4 years. So we were like doing that, and he's like, "Yeah, and we're gonna bring the harmonica class back." And immediately people are like, "Are you kidding?" Like it's game one. We're on national TV
Yeah.
against the Oilers, and like this is what we're gonna do. Like it's a crazy risk. Like why? Like whatever. And we're like, um, you know, there were obviously conversations, and there was a convincing of like, you know what, this is a humongous risk, but we need to get people talking about it. We need to get people invested in the game, and we said, let's swing for the fences, see what happens. And we didn't tell anyone. We didn't pre-promote it. They show up. People go nuts in the arena. And they start the harmonicas, and immediately everybody starts singing. And we were like, it's happening. We're like, oh my God, they're doing it again. And so we're like, we're posting it, whatever. Everybody in sports media is tweeting about it, posting
Yeah.
videos, being like, can you believe the Kings? And then we go out and score like 5 goals in the first 2 periods. And people are like, they're never losing. Like these grandmas are gonna propel the Kings to the Stanley Cup. And obviously we win that first game, goes crazy, and then immediately people are like, you have to bring them back. And so we're like, oh my God, we have to bring them back. So we get them for game two. Like, and mind you, these are like, you know, 70 to 90-year-old senior grandmas, like they're not performers. Like this is just the thing they do for like an hour a week in their harmonica class. And um we bring them back and we call the senior center, whatever. And we had been doing like things in K-Town, like community events, ball hockey, whatever, food drives, things like that. So we end up calling them. We convinced them to come back, and we got them all jerseys this
Oh
time.
yeah.
So excited.
Like legit like arrival footage and all
Well,
that.
that was game five. Game two, we just brought them back regularly. We
Yeah.
brought them in, got them up there, and we win again. And it was like, you are kidding me. Like Biz is like talking about them. We're sending
Yeah.
Biz harmonicas, like all this stuff. And then we end up losing game three and four. But then game five, we did the black car arrival. It's like a show at this point. And it was just amazing. Like it was something that like was so out of left field, but it got our brand so big. I have a report somewhere about how big it was. You know, just everyone talking about us on TV, on social. People knew about it in hockey, out of hockey.
Totally.
And it was amazing. And like I owe a lot, I mean, probably all of it to Sean, my boss, who they had this idea, him and his game entertainment team. Like it's a batshit crazy idea to pitch, and it worked out. So that's one thing we think about is how can we always get somewhere people don't expect? How can we get people talking about us um, outside of the hockey? So it was fun. It was a blast. We had so much fun with it.
Just legendary. And I'm just like the way you told it too. I'm picturing you guys the night of game one. Like, how is the hockey world? Like, yes, we knew this. We know this worked against the Bruins, and it was just, most just our fans. But
Yeah.
how's it going to react when TNT is airing it? When Biz is going to be talking about it, Spit and Chicklets is going to be talking about it. Everyone's going to be posting about it and just exploding in joy. That's so good. So great. What a great
So
story that
fun.
was.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Next one for you, Alec. It's gonna be hard to top that though. Just I kind of want to get your take on the future of hockey in the U.S. Like I think everyone thought like saw the Four Nations face off as this moment of like holy crap, like everyone in the country in really almost the world is talking about hockey, talking about the NHL to some degree as well. And then of course we have the return to the Olympics is expected to draw a lot of momentum as well. You've had some solid ratings the last couple of years. I mean this year not quite as much as last year perhaps when the Stanley Cup Finals, but from your perspective, both from a local perspective with Los Angeles, as well as more globally, more nationally, as a member of the NHL, how do you see the momentum of hockey and the NHL as a sport going forward?
I think hockey is really on the up and up, and it's hard to, everyone just defaults to the NFL. I mean, no one's going to ever be the NFL, but
Right.
the NFL and the NBA, they're the two big ones. No one else cares about everything else. When I was in baseball, that's how everyone felt the same way. And baseball made their fair share of mistakes, and they've grown. And now I think they've been doing a phenomenal job, and people don't give them credit for what they've done and how they've started to boost their player marketing and the LCC programs and the content, MLB studios and all of that stuff and
Yeah.
creators. And it's gotten really, really big. And they've done a lot of great things. And I think the NHL is following suit and following a lot of the game plan the MLB did. And um, I think that's important to learn from those mistakes and realize those. But I also think it's important to kind of create your own path and brand. And with Four Nations, that was a gigantic jump for hockey in the States for sure. It created a rivalry and people, I mean, everybody was talking about it
Yeah.
when it was happening. And it was amazing that they did that. And the Olympics hopefully are just as good, if not even better, because they're on a bigger stage and can get that. But hockey is one of the most impressive athletic sports in sports. And it's amazing to watch. It's amazing to be a part of. And what's interesting is especially as the game has grown in all these non-traditional markets, LA, people don't realize LA was a second six team. They were one of the first 12 teams in the NHL. 1967, they came in with the Penguins, right?
Yeah.
Like people think the Penguins are this storied franchise, and they are. But the Kings came at the same time. And for the longest time, they're the only team west of St. Louis. And so a lot of the growth from the West in these non-traditional markets, when the Gretzky years and all that, we helped kind of usher along, and it kept growing in Southern California and all of that. But people, the parents and the people who were adults or even teenagers and kids when hockey was growing with the Gretzky years and all that in Southern California, they are now just becoming and having kids who are now aging into youth hockey.
Yeah.
So this is really the first generation of kids who grew up with hockey in their backyard and making it accessible and having teams to root for and players and social media and all of that.
Yeah.
So now we're seeing, and like we're not going to see the payoff of the youth hockey investment of the last 20, 30 years for probably another 10, 15, because the people who all became hockey fans during the Gretzky years now are having kids that are playing hockey,
Mhm.
and those kids are getting older, and you're seeing more kids from Florida, Arizona, California, Nevada playing hockey at a higher and higher level, like Austin Matthews or Mitch Marner, right? But now you're seeing that, not Mitch Marner, Austin Matthews, and I forget who else was there, but um, you're seeing that now, and these kids are going to be going in, and now they're going to start having their own kids, and their friends and their whatever are going to have. So it's going to grow. I think there's going to be a huge boom of hockey, especially as it gets more accessible, and it needs to get cheaper. Hockey is such an expensive sport. Ice is still hard to come by. Ice is expensive. You're playing at the most oddball times. So there's a lot of barriers that I think are going to be continue to be broken down, that need to if we want the sport to grow. So I think with all of those things, it's really on a good path. The competition is the best it's ever been. The publicity, the social media is the best it's ever been, and I think that it's only going to continue to grow.
Hell yeah. No, there's a lot of good signals about where the sport's going. I mean, you mentioned infrastructure in these non-traditional markets. High school hockey's growing in the US and all over the place.
I think a sneaky, sorry to cut you off, but I think a sneaky thing is players from Canadian Junior, CHL,
I was gonna
can
bring
now
it
be
up.
NCAA. And I think that is a huge opportunity.
Yeah, like people who may not know about the sport, like the fact that a kid named Gavin McKenna is playing at Penn State, and
Yep.
those games are going to be big games at a big school with huge alumni base,
Yep.
and this could be the start of a really big next step for hockey overall. And also too, people don't realize as well that hockey's a very big sport in Europe as well. Like every year, I think they probably just finished up. Players go over, a select group of players goes over to Europe for
Yep.
media tours essentially, and they're huge there. They're huge stars there in Sweden and in some of these other countries. And so it's a global sport. It's growing. The storylines are getting more fun too. People know about the Kachuk brothers, and so it's going to be great to continue to see it going. And you guys are part of it too, helping to tell those stories and helping to get those personalities out there.
Trying to.
Next one for you, Alec. Tell me the player on the Kings who always nails it when it comes to content. You're like, okay, we got this guy. This is gonna be easy, or this is gonna be fire. Like, hell yeah, we can always count on this guy for some good content.
So he unfortunately signed with the Rangers, but it was Vladislav Gavrikov was just a content king.
Wow, I wouldn't have guessed that.
He's the best. Always funny, always down to be funny and do things and joke around and have a good time. So we'll miss him for sure, but he was the best. But this year, we have a lot of great guys who do a lot of great content. Um, Kevin Fiala, we just came back from Switzerland.
Hmm.
He doesn't do as much, but when he does really good stuff, and he's funny and like is kind of quirky and jokey like that, and people love him. Um, I think people love seeing Andre Kopitar. He's, what, 30, he just turned 38. So he knows he doesn't have to do as much, but he's just that type of guy. Adrian Kempe is great.
Hmm.
Um, Quentin Byfield is probably our biggest, like, best content. He's awesome.
Yeah.
Especially when he has another teammate to play off of, they're always joking around, having a good time. So we're excited. We got some new guys coming in that I've heard good things about. I can't wait to work with Corey Perry. The
Oh
mortal
yeah.
enemy of Kings fans, turned. Well, it's the not. Oh, you live long enough to die a hero. Uh,
Right, right.
before you see yourself become the enemy for Ducks fans, but it's actually the opposite for us. Um, so I think there'll be a lot, but Q is probably our best right now, uh, content wise.
Oh yeah, and I'm glad you snuck in. I was gonna try to bring up, Perry going to the enemy. A hell of a story. That first Ducks Kings game this year should be super interesting, and
Yeah,
and the fact that you have Perry on your team, you could basically book your ticket to the Stanley Cup final almost. I mean,
I
he's
hope so.
there. Hasn't quite gotten over the hump, since he left the Ducks, of course, but
Yeah.
who knows? Oh, that'd be a fun one. All right, Alec, time for the food question. Got always ask a food question. So you've been in LA now for a few years. So tell me the best meal to get in LA and where to get it.
Oh, it's definitely tough. There's just so much here. I'm partial to Italian. I think Italian is probably my favorite. There's so many. Jame here in El Segundo, in the South Bay is great. Felix in Venice is great. Barrique in Venice is great. I'm having amazing meals kind of all across the city. I haven't ventured too far into like the food scene in like West Hollywood and stuff, but that's on my list to start doing. But as LA, it's the traffic. But I mean, Nando, Trattoria in Manhattan Beach, they are amazing. Strand House in Manhattan Beach, Palmilla and Esperanza. Like, I mean, there's so much good stuff. But if I'm bringing someone here and I'm like, let's get great Italian, I'll probably go to Jame in El Segundo. It's
There we
it's
go.
unbelievable.
Love it. Some good. You're in a good food city for sure. Maybe
Yeah.
there's some Midwest stuff that you may miss here and there, but you can't go wrong with that with a lot of places in LA for sure.
Totally.
Next one for you, Alec. Almost down to the wire here with Alec, Alec Palmer of the LA Kings. Just when it comes to we touched on this a little bit in the interview. When it comes to these newer platforms, I mean, it's hard to call Threads a newer at this point, but Threads, Blue Sky, some of these other like Twitter competitors, or even like new features, like when TikTok creates channels or WhatsApp channels. Like, what's kind of your guys' perspective and POV on adopting these new channels when it comes to allocating resources, or hey, let's just get on there because why not? Let's get some real estate and we'll just repost from other channels, or let's be an early mover, or let's not be an early mover, and let's wait and see if it's worthwhile. Like, what's kind of the overall POV there?
Yeah, I mean, I think right away, anytime something comes up, we go and lock down our handle. Whether we plan to use it or not, it's something we learned just to like, let's have our handle. So we always have a login ready to go. We have our name. Um, but I think we're always going to go investigate right away, see what's happening, see what thing. I don't see a ton of value always in getting on there and trying to do as much as possible and investing a ton of resources until it's more proven. I
Yeah.
think there's always an advantage to being a first mover, but I like to be an early adopter more than a first mover, because you kind of let other people get the kinks out and figure it out, and then you jump in and you're still on the early end of the mass adoption. I don't think that, I mean, TikTok is the last one to really grab on, and that's been almost 10 years.
Mhm.
And nothing else has grabbed on. I mean, I don't care what Meta says or whatever. Like Threads is not going to usurp Twitter as the go-to. Blue Sky's not even in the same ballpark. And those things, like we have those, our Threads is just auto posting from our Instagram. Like, but
Mhm.
it just becomes a point where like we need to focus on the things we want to do and what we really need to focus on. These things, until they demand our attention, we don't have the time, energy, or resources or budget even to focus on those. So they're always on top of mind, and we revisit that conversation often, but none of them have really demanded our attention and resources in a way that we feel is um, constructive to building our fan base or our brand.
And along that too, where does Snapchat fit into the picture for social media and sports these days? Both from I guess from your personal perspective with the Kings, as well as like how you think the league feels about it.
I don't know. Like we just look at it as like we have to create so much for so many channels. Why do we keep adding more things to have to distribute? And let's focus on doing the things, the channels we want to focus on, doing them absolutely as best as possible.
Yeah,
Because the worst thing you can do is do everything half-assed. Like you can have all 8 channels running or platforms running, but like if they're all kind of not getting that much attention, what's the you're doing a disservice to your fans and to
totally.
yourself. So it's not that we don't want to be doing all these things. It's we're making, very concerted efforts to be like Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube are our 3 main focuses.
Yeah.
We are creating the most and the best content for those. And once we feel those are moving at a pace that we want and we're good at that, then we can explore adding more. So that's kind of what our mindset has been.
I think that's spot on for sure, and it'll be interesting to see as these as like YouTube becomes more multifaceted as they grow their post platform,
Right.
as Instagram continues to add more features, stuff more features into there. Like they're
Yep.
they're converging anyway in a lot of ways. So, but it's glad you guys take that approach of like let's do it and do it well.
Exactly.
All right, last one for you, Alec. It's a two-parter, but really quick one to get you out on. Tell me the Kings player whose social media we should go check out now, and also the Kings player who's going to break out next season. I know we talked about like Brant Clark had a great year. Quentin Byfield really had a break. So Kings player with social media we should go check out, and player we're gonna be talking about next year as this guy just broke out.
Um, Kings player to watch or to break out, I think it's Quentin Byfield. Byfield or Brant Clark. I think both of them are just awesome young players who are ready to take that step and become perennial stars. Quentin showed it a little bit last year. Brant is starting to get there as well with his
Yeah.
uh, you know more performance, more involvement in the lineup, things like that. So I'm really excited for both of them. Um, to watch on social media. Um, a lot of them don't post a lot. Quentin is very active. You always get some good like behind the scenes from weddings or trips or whatever from him. So I'd say him. But a lot of our guys, they're pretty private families, things like
Yeah.
that. But Quentin's probably the one who has the most fun.
Now that's kind of that's how it is too. You can look to the younger guys hopefully to change that a little bit, and this the summertime is too when you see all the weddings. It seems like all the NHL players
Yeah,
get married over the summer. Sometimes on like the same weekends. It seems like
yeah,
so you always do
exactly.
some stuff then too. All right, Alec, you nailed some one-timers. You tickled the twine. You lit the lamp. Insert your favorite, goal saying in there. Now your chance to take over the podcast and tell us your social media all-star follow. Just tell us. It can be a social media follow. It can be a blog, a newsletter, a podcast, a YouTuber, whatever you want. Just tell us who they are and why they're following.
So, I mean, the podcast I'm my Sean, who I mentioned earlier, who kind of turned me on to this was as the Acquired podcast. Uh,
Yeah,
talk about the starts of businesses and stuff. I love listening to that. They're long, but they're
they're
so
long.
interesting, and
Yeah,
I love you take little excerpts and bits and pieces out to apply to your own stuff. I love listening to that. The What Chaos podcast with Pete, DJ, and Sean. They're hockey focused, but they're always talking about a million different things. They're good friends. I love hearing them. Dan and Chris, Empty Netters, obviously they're great friends of the program. So listen to all those, but shows. I just started Abbott Elementary. That's funny. I'm a Tim Robinson stan, so the movie Friendship, the TV show Detroiters, and I think you should
yeah,
leave. Um, so a lot of those, and I recently started reading more of the Lincoln Bio
great stuff.
newsletter. That's always great. And there's just so many creatives out there that I love to follow. But I'll shout out one specifically, a friend and my former boss, Tyke Green. He's always been like a big inspiration and to me and in the world in the creative world. And I love that we get to work together still, and I get to hire him to do King stuff and
Yeah.
be around. And it's awesome. He just released an amazing mini documentary about Shane Bieber's return. Check that out. But yeah, I mean, I could go on forever, the list of people that I get inspired by, but I think that's probably good.
Some great shout outs there. Some I have, some I consume, some I haven't. So definitely some good ones to check out there, and I appreciate the recommendations. And how about you? Where can we find you, as well as all the places you want to send us for LA Kings content?
Yeah, I mean, follow the Kings at LA Kings pretty much everywhere. We're pushing a lot on YouTube is going to be a huge focus for us this year. So make sure you watch that, like, subscribe, do all that. And then me personally, at Alec Palmer on Instagram, at Alec Palmer with two underscores on Twitter. And that's pretty much what I use. So obviously always LinkedIn, but yeah.
Hell yeah, keep an eye on them. They do great content. Again, as much as that hates me, but I hate to admit it. Just tremendous stuff and really good insight today, Alec. And really appreciate you coming on right before the season's about to kick off. Camp's going to be here before you know it, and appreciate you coming on the podcast today.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me.
Such good stuff overall. Just cannot thank Alec for coming on the podcast today. The NHL season is about to kick off. The Kings are about to get back in the swing of things, but they've already done a great job over the offseason. Alec talked about doing the stuff in Switzerland with Kevin Fiala, all the great stuff they have going on, and he's just so sharp and articulate and thoughtful about this stuff. I cannot thank him enough for coming on the podcast today. So I hope you enjoyed it because I sure did. Well, that'll do it for this episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. Thanks again for listening. As always, hit me up on Twitter and JH287, also on LinkedIn. DSMsports.net is the website where you find everything, and the podcast is available on whichever podcast platform is your favorite. Until next time, this is Neil Horwitz signing off for the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast.